Welcome to the Grief Bully podcast. I am your host, J.Nicole. Thank you for joining our weekly discussion around grief, mental health, and your overall personal wellness. The Grief Bully podcast will serve as a vehicle to help you navigate life's journey. Be sure to subscribe, review, and share the podcast with anyone in your life that you think it will help. Let's bully grief together. What's up? What's up? What's up, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of the Grief Bully podcast. I am your host, J.Nicole. Today is Monday, August the 17th. We are rocking and rolling back in the studio for another amazing episode. You can hear it in my voice. I mean, I haven't been this excited yet because today we are celebrating our 1-year Pod-A-Versary. I'm excited. It's officially August the 19th, but we are going to start celebrating that today a little bit early. I'm even more excited because I'm not here by myself today. This will not be a solo round for our Podiversary episode. We have a phenomenal guest coming up. Before I get into that, definitely go check out last week's episode. It was our 52nd episode, so we did kind of sort of celebrate a little bit in a more chilled way. We were on there recapping some of the last 51 episodes. And so that was something pretty cool and chill, but definitely go check it out. Subscribe, share, leave a review, all of that good stuff. I definitely want to encourage you to do that. I want to take a second before we get into it as well to thank our sponsors, BetterHelp. They are an online counseling company that offers therapy from the comfort of your home. You can do it via text, video message, phone conversation, whatever you feel comfortable with. They do offer that option. Go to that website, trybetterhelp.com/thegriefbully. Listen, it's affordable, about $65. If you use that link, trybetterhelp.com/thegriefbully, you will receive 10% off your first month. So if you're going through a tough time, you don't feel comfortable, you don't know where to go, that is a good option for you. So I definitely want to thank our sponsors for that. Listen, if you have been an avid follower, supporter of the Grief Bully podcast, everything that we've been doing, then you know this has been a long, long road. We started the podcast August the 19th last year, 2019, and that day also dubs as my late grandmother's birthday. And so I launched the podcast on her birthday, which meant so much to me. And today we have a guest on the show that's going to help share this episode with me. I'm so fortunate, super blessed. I'm about to do the cap of all cap, gas you all the way up to make this whole thing just come full circle. Today we have with us the lovely Dr. You know what? I'm not even going to tell you. This is a model, a radio TV personality. I'm talking PhD, doctor. I'm super educated type of person. We do have on here the lovely Dr. Summer Wayans. Yes, she is affiliated, a part of the Wayans family, but this is about her right now, and we're going to go in and make this happen today. Summer, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? You totally gassed me up. I'm over here like, okay, all right. Let me jump in.
Yeah, we over here. Listen, I mean it truthfully. Your spirit. We met on Instagram. We haven't obviously had an opportunity to meet in person. I do hope that eventually in life that will happen. But we did connect. We do have a mutual acquaintance, which is a nice person that we both know. And so I'm super grateful for that as well. When you're talking about grief and loss and you're posting from my perspective, different things. When I started this, I'm like, do people really want to talk about grief? I mean, it's this thing that we go through and we experience. And I think a lot of the times we don't even know that that's what we're going through and experiencing. So it was very important for me to bring this awareness, this space, this platform, this home, especially for people in my community. That was something that was very important to me because I felt like as an African-American person, I didn't really have much guidance on that. And it could be the same in other cultures, but I can only speak from my own culture. And I felt like it was more so towards religious, like, hey, to be absent from the body, to be present with the Lord and all these things, which, listen, I'm with it. But how do we navigate on the flesh side of things? How do we learn to live without those people? So having you on the show to talk about your personal and professional experience, because we did say Dr. Summer Wayans, what do you think about that? What do you think about grief? What did you know about it? What do you know about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can piggyback off of what you're talking about. We come from similar communities. So, you know, it wasn't so much talked about. You know, I remember being a kid and my first experiences, you know, with someone passing away. And I remember I was kind of sent to my dad's house and I came back and everybody was acting different. And I'm like, why are we not going to visit so and so, you know? And then it was like later they told me that she had passed away. And I'm like a kid. I remember I couldn't have been but like 6 or 7, but I was just kind of confused, like, well, why didn't nobody tell me? Right. So I think there's a lot of that where we just don't really talk about these things. And even as, you know, I'm promoting for the podcast and I'm telling people to tune in, I'm like, look, I know we don't usually talk about this stuff, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about the grief. Let's normalize it because we all experience it at some point, unfortunately. But let's also talk about the healing. We don't have to stay just focused on the grief. It's a process. Everybody's process looks different, but ultimately the ideal is for us to find the healing in everything that we have to go through. So personally, professionally, like I talk it like I walk it, you know, like.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And I think that's the part of it too, is encouraging that PS to the story, like you said. And I'm sure, and I noticed that on your comment, your caption, where it did say, hey, I know these are things that we don't normally talk about. Let's talk about it. And that's it right there. I think that what I've gotten is a lot of feedback in terms of saying things that people want to say, or they don't know how to say or put it into words and saying that. And so that is a heavy burden, if you will, to carry to some extent, because I'm really trying to speak for myself, but not only myself, but for those people who are voiceless. And so that's why I was so excited for you to be willing to come on and share from your experience and some of your story. So you lost someone that you mentioned when you were a lot younger.
Yeah.
What do you think now as an adult dealing with loss? And I know, unfortunately, you most recently lost your grandmother. And when I tell you my heart broke for you, it definitely did. And so I definitely, if you feel comfortable talking about that versus loss when you're younger, you don't really put it together, and now you're an adult and you're going through loss on top of COVID-19.
Yeah. You know, I think when I reflect back, I'm like, I just remember there just being this absence. Like we just never went back over. The person just was never around again, but it wasn't ever really talked about. So when people were sad, it wasn't talked about, right? And so what I found now in reflection is that a lot of that has to do with everybody grieving differently, you know, and the conflicts that arise when we grieve differently. Because if I'm sad and I want to cry, I don't want to hear somebody telling me that, you know, they're not in pain, they're not suffering anymore. Like, yeah, I know that, but that
you are preaching.
You know, that don't make it better today. So I think there was that, and then you know, I think it's something that I learned this year. And when I tell you 2020, lessons to be learned in 2020, that's what I'm taking away from it. In a short period of time, I'm dealing with a lot of different losses. So I buried 3 loved ones in 2020.
Wow.
That's a lot. And
that is a lot.
You know, it's like, we're not even prepared for the one. Okay. So to let alone after multiples, it's like, wait, hold on. Okay. No, for real. Wait, hold on. Okay. I went off the ride. Can I get off?
Let me off. Let me out of here.
I'm just saying. And it's funny, you know, because I do this as a profession in terms of talking to people about their grief and processing it. I'm a person as well, right? I talk to people all the time, and I'll talk to my clients when I'm working in therapy, and they'll say, well, how do you deal with all of this and be okay? I'm like, well, I got a therapist too.
Right.
I go to sex, like on call, like on a regular schedule, because we need a place to process as well. We live life.
Super fast.
In addition to doing therapy, we live life outside of that. So it's learning those skills and applying those skills and having that safe place to process it. And ultimately, I think being patient with yourself and kind to yourself. You know, I remember earlier this year, after the first loss of the year, I was like, all right, lost my grandpa. I was like, okay, I'm broken. I was like, all right, okay. I was like, week 1, all right. Week 2, all right, we're gonna do the services, right? That's the final.
Right.
day after the services, I was like, all right, I'm supposed to be able to start over, like go to work and do everything. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there talking to my therapist, like, it's been 3 weeks. I don't understand why I'm still sad. And she was like, excuse me? She was like, are you hearing yourself? And I was like, you know what? I just did as I said it. That sounds quite silly, right? Like, I'm not supposed to be sad anymore? Somebody who's been around my whole life? Nah. And I think that's what we have to normalize, is that it's a process. It doesn't happen like that, and it doesn't happen the way we want it to either. We just have to hold on and kind of ride that ride until we can get to that healing side.
Yes, and I definitely echo those sentiments, wanting to jump off that ride. And so I think what you said too is giving ourselves a break to understand that it is a process. And I feel like that's where a lot of us do struggle, is because you're yearning, your body is yearning so much, in my experience, to just get back to life prior to that day. So any moment prior to losing that loved one is what I felt my soul was searching for, and yet I was coming up short. And so I'm getting really frustrated. Normally a resilient person, so that was kind of frustrating as well, to say, hey, what is wrong with you? Like, you should be able to, like you're saying, why can't I just snap back into it? This is, you know, it's a part of life. But it's not like that. So you said you had that one loss. Now you have another person that passed away in the same year, and we're not even done this year yet.
No, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing you on that, for sure.
Reverse, do you hear me?
Look, like, right, let's redo that. So I'm saying we're not done the year based on calendar, but we are not saying that leaves enough time for any more losses in her life or my life. God, please hear that.
I appreciate the reframe. I appreciate the reframe.
Let's reframe. These words are too powerful these days.
Real talk, real talk. And I mean, I think that's it. We have to be kind with ourselves and patient, because things happen that we can't control, you know? And the thing is, even as a resilient person, and I'm glad that you bring that up, because I think that's a really big part of it. I think culturally and individually as a person, right? We are taught to believe in our resiliency, right? We've seen it echoed in our history. So what we don't see echoed is how we develop that resiliency, or how resiliency looks different, right? And so I think we end up holding ourselves to this expectation that isn't realistic, right? And saying, well, resilient means I have to be strong, and strong means I can't cry, or I can't be sad, and we start connecting these pieces that don't really go together. It's like forcing the puzzle together. But ultimately, if those are the pieces that you're jamming together, and that's how you're living your life, you're going to be having that negative self-talk. You know, you're going to be kicking yourself and pushing yourself down because it's not good enough, because the picture that you've set in your head isn't realistic to life. It doesn't take into consideration all the things that are out of our control and the things that are within our control.
Wow, you said so much there. We could probably end the episode right now, but there was so much there. And I love what you said about, we never saw it though. So we don't know how. The how to is what is missing. That right there was a gem that probably set so many people free. It's like, you have to be kind to yourself. You never saw it. You didn't see it. And if you saw it, you didn't know what you were seeing, because no one said, hey, this is what it looks like. I am right now healing in the proper way. I am dealing with my grief. I am dealing with my loss. No one ever had that conversation with me about it at all. It's just people expressing their empathy, their sympathy, tears, food, Airbus shirts, candles, all of that stuff. But as far as the actual how to, Summer, I think you're right. That is the part that we are definitely missing. Do you feel that as a Black woman, it has been harder for you to grieve?
You know, I think I'm going to say something that you said. I only know my experience, right? So I don't know what it's like to grieve like anybody else. I feel like I was struggling. I'm still struggling. There's some days where I'm just like, whoa. But I think ultimately what I take away from it is that, like you said, I think I'm a resilient person, right? And I'm educated. I'm educated in the field of psychology. I have a doctorate. I know how to cope. I know what these tools are, right? And so you would think it'd be easier. That's one of those expectations that isn't realistic, you know? So I think even in that, what I recognize is if I struggle and I have the tools supposedly, right? I have the knowledge and I struggle. Well, you know what? No, I definitely got to let people know, like, hey, this is normal, for real, for real. Because if you can have all the tools and still struggle, that means it's normal to struggle, right? It's okay to struggle. Oh, man, if somebody would have told me that, it's okay to struggle. It's okay to not be okay. Now, you don't want to stay not okay, right?
Right.
But
Right.
it's okay to not be okay.
That's beautiful. And I think that right there, there's so many people who just need permission. They need to hear that statement. Like you said, you have the experience, the tools, the resources and all of that. And you still have your moments. So a person who doesn't, like myself, we're not equipped in that area. I attribute a lot to my grief therapist. And I know that if it wasn't for that professional help and guidance, it would have been a lot harder to move through, because so many things that she's taught me, I wouldn't have saw it that way. So lending that perspective to try to help me navigate has been very, very instrumental. So I thank you for the service that you do in this industry on top of dealing with your own grief and your own loss. I think that's huge. And I'm sure
Thank
it
you.
makes it harder for you to be able to accept when you don't feel like you're moving along how you would like to, and how to be able to navigate those things. So being out in I believe in LA, how has that been with COVID-19? I feel over here in New Jersey where I am, we were hit pretty hard as well. In New York and New Jersey, we're doing bad for quite some time. Things are getting a little bit better here, but I believe still over there it's pretty tough. What has that been like as far as that part of the grief on top of losing loved ones and life as we knew it?
Yeah, I think this COVID thing introduced a whole new element to grieving, one that I don't think we could have really prepared for. So um, I've noticed that while I'm feeling very grateful and having a lot of gratitude for technology and the fact that we can reach out, never in a million years did I think I'd have to attend one of my grandmother's funerals on Zoom or Facebook or YouTube or whatever platform it was streaming on, and not be there. And so I think this has added this element of, you know, in our society, I think we think, okay, somebody passes away, then we're sad, we have a funeral or a service of sorts, right? And we let that person rest and then we move on, right? But I think for a lot of people that the funeral is the final part, right? That's I get to say goodbye, right? I get to accept what's happened and process it, right? And grieve with your family. I was sitting in my living room, like looking at a screen, like, this is so awkward because you're by yourself or you're with minimal people, you're all broken up, that's a part of our healing. Yeah. So I think with COVID, it's added these different elements where you can't even be there, you know? Loved ones are in hospitals. You can't go to the hospital to visit them. And I'm like, man, what's that like for the person who's in the hospital by themselves? You know what I'm saying? Like, we thrive so much off of human contact. And so I think this is providing, you know, us the opportunity to practice that resiliency, to practice our flexibility and figuring out different ways of doing things. But man, if I can't be appreciative for being able to be in the same room and touch somebody, you know what I mean? And not worry at my extreme level. I'm a germaphobe anyways, but to not completely worry that, you know, this is going to end in death. And I lost someone, you know, who had tested positive. So it's just a reality that you don't think about. And then when you're met with it, it's like, wow, you know, even the idea of, even if I could get on a plane, which at the time we weren't really allowed to travel, if I could get on a plane to go to New York, which at the time the levels were ridiculous and running rampant, right? Even if I could do that, what risk am I having to put myself in order to just be able to say goodbye to my loved one, to go be with my family? Like, these are things that you don't think you're going to have to consider. So we've had to consider a lot of these things. I think it's a part of showing how we're able to figure these things out, right? They're having services online and everybody's having to modify their way of life. And so the best thing that I can do right now is just try to be flexible, you know, so I bend and I don't break, because I'm a creature of habit. I'm a person of routine, you know. So when this first happened, I made a list. I was like, yo, I got to give people tips. We got some tips, you know, 15 tips to, you know, get through quarantine, because you're inside and everything that you know to do is disrupted. So it's been an interesting ride, but I think through this, you know, you really get to practice all those skills all at once, because everything's happening. And you know, therapy, I think, is a great thing. I'm doing therapy. I go to therapy. I talk about therapy. We have to start talking about it. And one last thing is, when you were mentioning the fact that, you know, the fact that I go to therapy, but I also show up and I do it, I think this is me working in my service, right? This is what I feel like God's instilled in me to do on this earth, is to spread the word and to start to bring down that level of stigma, right? Because people are like, well, you don't look crazy. What you going to therapy for? And I'm like, life, everyday life. You don't have to be crazy to go to therapy. And we have to talk about these things. When I do groups and I'm facilitating groups and I'm talking to my clients individually, I do bring personal experiences in, because they need to know that we're human and this is normal. It's normal not to know, but we also have the ability to learn the skill, gather the tool, combine them, get the support needed, but ultimately continue to move forward, continue to advance, continue to evolve. And so if by me showing up and telling people like, man, today's a tough day, but when I'm off of work, I'm going to go ride my bike and do a yoga session and go love on my dog. Like, you know, I'm going to make a smoothie and then make room for some chocolate, you know, whatever it might be. We have to talk about it, the good, bad, and the ugly, you know?
Very, very true. I was going to say, I wish my go-to was a smoothie during all of this, because it hasn't been. It's been crazy, but we're going to save that for another day. You share so many gems, so much power there, and I think that's you use the word disruption. It has been a disruption, and for us to become flexible, to bend and to not break is huge, and everything. I mean, everything you just mentioned, I've thought about that as far as having to say goodbye to a loved one and have to go through that from a distance and through technology. I can't imagine how difficult that could have been. I do know people who've had to experience that, and now I understand that you've had to go through that as well. So it's not something that I take lightly, although I never thought that there could be something to say, hey, I'm glad I was able to see my person. And, you know, because it's like, really, I mean, it's all pretty bad at that time. And so I definitely send my love out to you for that and having to experience that. So you said a lot, but I love it. This is amazing. You're like, one last thing. I'm like, no, we're not at one last thing yet, Queen. We're not at one last thing yet. But you said that 2020 has been a year of lessons for you. What do you believe has been the biggest lesson for you, if you can choose one?
The biggest lesson? Man, that's a hard one, because there's been a lot. I think what I find myself, the reminder that I keep telling myself and others, is the be kind and be patient to yourself, right? The whole idea of self-love, because it really does. It starts with us and those messages that we're giving ourselves. And if we can't build ourselves up, and then we go out into a world that isn't necessarily set up or equipped to build us up, right? Then really, what are we doing? You know? So I think that's been a big focus of mine. You know, it's being kind, being gentle with myself, and being patient, because, you know, I'm an overachiever, I'm a go-getter. And so the idea that, like, I took a week off of work for the first time, and I can't tell you how long. And I was just like, yo, the fact that I'm struggling to take a week, everybody want to take a week off of work. And
yes,
I'm really
I would
like,
love to.
Well, maybe I'll do 2 days and then I'll take 2 days off. And then, no, I took a whole week off and just really tended to me. And it was probably the best thing that I could have done, because I'm important. And we need to understand that, you know? And if I'm telling my clients this, if I'm trying to spread this positivity and all these things, I have to also be able to reflect that within myself, not just outside of myself. So I couldn't give you one word or a phrase.
No,
but
listen,
in a nutshell, that's the message.
I didn't think you would give one word. Just like if someone asked me that, I would be like, well, how much time do you have? So I appreciate that. And I think that's all a beautiful thing. Self-care is so huge, but again, I think it goes back to our experiences, our lives, and just how we were brought up, what we did see. And so it's like, we're just going to keep going. We don't really even know that this is disruption, because one day you saw the family member, now you don't see him again, and everyone's just kind of going on. And it's a lot of that I've seen in my life too as well. I do have this question for you, and I just thought about it right now. Do you think any of this matters? So what I mean by that is, do you think the Grief Bully podcast matters? Do you think talking about these conversations, because someone asked me that before, do I think what I'm doing and what we're doing in conversations like this will actually help, and like how? Just because we're talking about it, how will that help? I'm just curious your opinion.
How much time do we have?
Right. And listen, don't try to send me an invoice for this therapy session, because I'm for my entire audience. Guys, you guys are going to have to send in some tips, because she is dropping gems.
We'll be up front. No, short answer, yes, I think it matters. Longer answer, I think it matters because this is the part that's been missing, right? We've identified a lot of problems, but we haven't really focused on the solutions. We've identified more problems and negativity, but we stay focused and stuck there. So in order to move forward, we have to talk about these things and normalize them. And the same way that we question if someone else is going to care about what we have to say, someone else is questioning the same thing. And by hearing it, they might get motivated to do something different. Or even if I touch one person, right? Like, I don't know how many people I'm going to touch on this earth, but if I touch one, I did something, right? I did something a little bit more than nothing, right? And so I continue to just keep that intention there. Whatever that intention is, if it's good and it's positive, do it, because we don't know who's going to benefit from it or how they're going to benefit from it. We just know that it's been put in us to give that and live it, So I love it. And I mean, like I said, I follow your podcast. I follow you on IG, and it was like super random. One day, it was the message. And you see, here we are like a month later, right?
Yes.
So you didn't know that your message was going to touch me. And you didn't know, as a result, I was going to be motivated to come and talk about this from a personal perspective as well as a professional perspective, right? Because I haven't talked about this, People have been hitting me up and stuff, and I've just been like, I can't even right now. Like, I don't even know where to go, how to. And then I'm like, reminder, what you have to say is important. Somebody might benefit from that, or be consoled in it, or even know that they're not alone in it. And sometimes that means the world. So yes, it matters. It mattered to me. I'm sure it matters to other people. I've already been seeing people respond to my posts, kind of saying like, I can't wait to listen. Like, I'm so happy you're talking about this. Like, this is amazing. This is beautiful. Those kinds of things. And you don't know until you put it out there.
So true. Thank you. Thank you for those words. Thank you for believing, because I think sometimes I do think that, like, wow, how will this make change? But I think when we do that, like you said, we're thinking from it on this large, ginormous scale. And for me, it has been about the one person and knowing that. And so whenever I do feel like that, like, hey, is this, really going to help? I say, hey, remember that one person that DM'd you? Remember that person that's comment, or all those blue hearts that are dropped, because people it does resonate with them. And I'm not saying things that are easy. Today, I put up a post that said, if my soul could talk, it would cry. And that's because
I dropped the blue heart on that.
Yeah. It was rough, Queen. And it had to do with my grandmother, as she was in my dream. And it was like, I was going to go, and it's like all these chaos was happening around. And I had to go. I told her, I said, I'll be right back. And I had to go pick her up. She could walk, but I was carrying her, and I had to keep stopping because it was like heavy. And then I said to her, I was like, were you worried that I was going to come back? And she said, no. She just said it so mild, like, no, like that. And when I woke up, I'm like, like, it's just those things. And so I have to talk about that. But I was laying there, I'm like, what quote will I say this morning? I was like, if my soul could talk, well, I was saying to myself, like, what would it say? And I'm like, right now, I feel like crying. So it's like, well, it would cry. And so I know that you also lost your grandmother, and we will get into our In Love and Memory segment, but I understand how that could be, although I don't know exactly. I'm not you. I'm not a part of your family, so I don't know how that has been, but I definitely am right there with you in your corner.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we got to do the work. You know what I mean? And while we just strive to maybe touch that one person, we also have to recognize that one person is a part of a bigger society, a part of a larger community. And gets to talk about their grief and normalize the fact that grief is a process, right? Grief. And just to give a little education for anyone who's listening that doesn't know, grief involves at least 5 stages. In terms of psychology, there's a theory that talks about 5 stages of grief, okay? We go through bargaining, denial, sadness or depression, right? We might even go through anger. Hopefully we get to acceptance, right? And there's no one way that we get there. So one day I might be angry, then I might be sad, and then I might be in denial, and then I'm just not going to deal with it. But then I might be bargaining with God, and then I might come to a place where I think I've accepted things, and something might happen to trigger me, and here I go again, right? We got to normalize that this is a part of that process. So when that person normalizes that, they go back to their family and they start to normalize it, right? The little ones start to hear how it's being normalized. Maybe an older person understands, like, dang, there's a different way of doing this. And now we've impacted more than just one person. Every person we touch is exponential. So we never know how far that's going to go. We don't know what this is going to look like, 100 years from now. And where you track it back to see who was impacted and how that made the shift that ended up being the next big thing, right? But we know what the intention is. We strive for this beauty, this pureness and positivity, right? And then we pray and hope for the outcome.
I love that. And I was a little nervous when you started talking about the 5 stages. And the reason why is because you probably know from my social media, I'm like, no, the 5 stages of grief, no one would believe the way that it is. But the way that you worded it, there were so many beautiful things that you might experience this. And hopefully you get to acceptance. You weren't saying this as this concrete process. And I think that that's so beautiful. Like the way that you put it, I am going to make sure I snip that and use that, because that's beautiful. That's exactly how it is. As we start to wind down here, I just have a few more questions and then we'll kind of get ready to get out of here. But I do want to ask you, has it been harder for you as far as the loss of your grandmother because of it being so public? And I'm just curious about this. I had this conversation when I was speaking with TJ and Taj Jackson about their uncle, and just how it's just different. Like, not trying to minimize my grandmother, but you wouldn't know she passed away unless I told you or you were in this area. But I feel like when there's like something going on in the world, it could be different. I've had a friend whose father passed away in 9/11. And so she's not able to just kind of deal with it on her own. She has to see it as this big thing that the world talks about and puts videos up about, and the news is constantly talking about. So if you feel comfortable, if not, no worries.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing to talk about. And typically this is something I think I probably wouldn't think to talk about. But it is interesting because I lost on my dad's side, I lost my grandmother and my grandfather both earlier this year. So then losing my grandmother on my mom's side, that's the one that everyone found out about, right? And I say found out because, as a family, we had already been dealing with the loss of our grandmother for about a month. And so you think you're at one part of the grieving process, right? And then I woke up one morning to a slew of messages and DMs and comments and tags and posts and alerts. And I was just like, whoa, because it caught me off guard. I wasn't anticipating that, right? Because when you're part of an entertainment family, you're still just a family at the end of the day, right? The world sees you as an entertainment family, but you're just a family going through the motions, So it was definitely like oh yeah, I forgot about this. I didn't consider that was going to have to be a part of my grieving process. And so something that I learned through it, though, and I'm always looking for these little lessons and things like that.
I love it. So keep teaching.
Something that I learned through it was, you know, I think as a society, when somebody passes away, we go and we tell people, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry, right? But ultimately, I was overwhelmed with sorry. And I'm like, oh, right? And I was like, wow, I never realized on the flip side how that can be received by a person who's grieving, depending on where they're at. So I said to myself, you know what, from now on, I'm going to, when I find out somebody has a loved one that's passed away and they're going through something, I'm going to instead send them something inspirational, something supportive. Let them know I'm here if they want to talk, if they need a meal, whatever it is they need to let me know, right? And because it's true to me, I would provide some light, because I like to bring light, right? Some sort of remembrance of it's okay to experience whatever you're experiencing, and to know that that's okay, right? And I think that might also change the way that we grieve in a more supportive way, right? Instead of kind of tearing open the wound each time. So I think through everything, there's lessons to be learned. And, you know, it was definitely a different process, and it's still different, but it also is like, wow, there's that many more people that want to show up for me and be in my corner. There's so many more people that are sharing stories about how their lives have been touched by her, or how grateful they are for her having children and loving us the way that she did. And I just got goosebumps right now, because that is so fulfilling, right? So it's been a lot, but definitely different, a different experience. I wasn't expecting, but with everything, I try to do my best to pull away something so that it wasn't for nothing, right?
Yes, thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful said, and I love that you are just an advocate for teaching and finding those lessons. I think that might be the biggest sentiment that I've learned, thing that I'll walk away with from this episode, is that there's a lesson to be learned, and you are bringing that sunshine and that light. And thank you for sharing that. I was just curious about it from that standpoint and just understanding. Like I said, I had heard about it, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't see you say anything. And just from a person who's been through those type of things, I'm like, I'll just, wait on that. But not everybody looks at it that way and understands that. So thank you for being willing to open up and share that with us. It actually just segues us into our In Love and Memory segment. It's a part of our show that's very, very important to me, to humanize people that have gone on, our angels. Is sometimes I think after they pass away, we lose sight of that person. And sometimes we feel like other people have as well. And so it's been important to me to just say their names and just to make sure that we know that they still live on forever. So our In Love and Memory segment today, we're going to shout out some of your loved ones and go through it right here. So this week we're going to have, we just spoke about it, your lovely grandmother, Elvira Wayans, Dwayne Wayans, Suzanne Angevin, Ange Angevin, Khalid Angevin, Poppy Johnson, Keith Hasson, Talisha Moxley-Turner, Guy Celestin, Terry Wilson, and of course, all of your clients that you are unable to name right now. And so from the Griefbully podcast, from myself, from my heart, and everyone over here, I just send you so much love to yourself, to your family, to the families of your employees that weren't able to deal, and an extra to you all, because a lot of people who've lost someone during COVID-19 hasn't had the opportunity to be with their family and grieve, as we mentioned, and do those things that we have been fortunate, which I never thought that would be considered fortunate, but after 2020, it has become fortunate to be able to do that. So thank you for sharing your loved ones with us on here today. And so I do want to bounce into our Inspirational Boost, which is a part of our show that's brought to us by Adina J Designs. They make, create, and inspire us to decorate apparel with signs, custom tumblers, doormats, all that good stuff. Go follow them at Adina J Designs, ADENA JAYDESIGNS. Tell them I sent you. You might get a discount. I'm not sure, but like I said last week, Closed mouths don't get fed. So we'll see. The quote this week is, when things change inside of you, things change around you. I'll say it again. When things change inside you, things change around you. That is our quote for this week. And I am so thankful to have you on here. Before I let you go, I do have one question I do ask all of my guests. If you had to choose a color for your grief, what would it be and why?
Can I choose the sunset?
Yeah.
And the reason why is because there is beauty in a sunset. There can be sadness in the fact that daylight is going away and night is coming, the day is ending. But there's also inspiration because there's so many different colors and shades, and they're all unique. They're all different, but nonetheless, they're sunset. So I say sunset.
Dr. Summer Wayans did say she was an overachiever, ladies and gentlemen. So I just want to remind us all that she did start this episode saying that. And I think the way that she just mic dropped on the what color is your grief and why was amazing. And not to mention, I love the sunset. I never considered that about the sunset, the fact that daylight, the day is coming to an end. Man, I'm going to have to listen to this episode myself multiple times to catch all those gems. I might need a pen and some paper. Listen, guys, we are wrapping up episode 53, which is our Pod-A-Versary, August the 19th, 1 year of the Griefbully podcast. What an amazing episode. We've had Dr. Summer Wayans on here sharing her love, her light with us. We cannot thank you enough, Queen. It's been our pleasure. Where can people follow you?
Thank you. One, for having the platform, for giving everyone else the platform, and for speaking the names of those that often are forgotten. I appreciate that so much. Everyone can follow me for entertainment at Summer Wayans. Summer like the season, Wayans, Wayans. If you're interested in more of the mental health side, I do have my doctor page. So that's at Dr. Summer, PhD, at Dr. Summer, PhD, and that's Dr. Summer, PhD.
Perfect. I'll make sure I drop those links as well.
I try to put, yay! I try to put all that good stuff on there so you guys know where to find me. And the people that subscribe to my website, they'll actually get, they get the links and all that first, and they knew about this podcast before everybody else. So
guys, you gotta jump on the email list, get that exclusive. Jeff, definitely want to follow her, connect with her. I think she has so much to deposit into our lives. I am excited to see where your future goes. It's been another great episode, guys. Listen, you know where to find me. I hang out the most on social media. You can check us out on YouTube. I'm a little bit on Facebook, but Instagram is my home. You already know that. Follow me there at I_am_J.Nicole. Guys, so next time, you already know. Love and light. Peace.